I poured my heart and soul into our startup, working 16-hour days while my best friend showed off on social media like he was some tech mogul. For 3 months, I did everything. Product clients pitched decks while he just networked. Then one day, he called me into a meeting and kicked me out of the company I helped build. Said I wasn't founder material. What he didn't know, I'd already protected the one thing he thought he'd stolen from me. Everything. I wasn't anyone special. No trust fund. No Ivy League degree. No famous last name, just a regular guy with big dreams. And a willingness to grind harder than most I believed in. Building something from nothing, something real. That's why when my best friend Eric came to me with an idea for a startup, I didn't hesitate, Eric. And I had been close since college. We weren't just friends, we were brothers. We'd pulled all-nighters before exams, backpacked across Europe with just 500 Hondas each, and once shared a one-bedroom apartment just to chase our careers in the city. He was always the charismatic one, the smooth talker who could charm investors, strangers, even bouncers at sold-out clubs. Was the quiet one, the builder, the one who got things done behind the scenes. So when he pitched the idea, an AI-based platform for small business logistics, as he put it, I saw a spark in his eyes I hadn't seen since our college days. We'll start from zero, he said, but give it 6 months. We can own this market. I remember the excitement I felt in that moment. We weren't just talking about business. We were talking about changing our lives, finally creating something that mattered. We decided to split everything. 50-50? No contracts, just a handshake. I trusted him that much. The first few weeks were chaotic. We worked out of coffee shops, sometimes out of my tiny apartment, other times from a library corner with free Wi-Fi. We had no money, no employees, and no product, just a vision. But the real work, that fell on me. Eric said he'd handle strategy and connections, which at first sounded fair. But while he was out grabbing drinks with potential investors and posting flashy updates on LinkedIn, I was knee-deep in code designing the platform from scratch. I pulled 16-hour days, no weekends, no parties. I didn't even see my girlfriend more than twice that month. I handled the product development, did the research on target clients, even set up the initial pitch decks. I cold called leads, ran early demos, and managed our social media. Eric would check in now and then with a "looking great, bro," and vanish again. Still, I didn't complain. I thought, that's just how partnerships work. We all contribute in our own way. After 3 months, things started to pick up. We had a rough prototype, and a few beta users were actually giving us great feedback. I even got a small business to commit to a pilot. Our mailing list started growing, and suddenly, Eric's networking started to matter. People were showing interest. Real VCs were replying to our emails. Eric started dressing sharper. New watch, new shoes. He began arriving to meetings late, sometimes not at all. Said he was in talks with someone big. I thought it was a good sign. Things are moving fast, he said one night over drinks. You just have to trust the process. Be patient. So I kept working. I spent late nights refining our code, fixing bugs, polishing the UI. I even took a part-time job, teaching coding, just to pay my rent, because we still weren't making any money. Meanwhile, Eric posted photos at fancy rooftops with captions like "Startup Life" and "Hat Next Unicorn." He talked a big game, said we were building the next Stripe, but I still believed in us. I believed in him. One night, I remember staying up past 3 a.m. to finalize a new pitch deck before a big meeting he had with investors. I emailed it, triple-checked every slide, and even included user testimonials. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji. That was it. Looking back now, I should have seen it coming. But at the time, I didn't. I was too deep in the dream, too invested to question anything. Eric was more than my co-founder. He was someone I'd once called family. So I kept building, kept believing, until the day he changed everything. The first red flag was small. So small, I almost ignored it. We'd just signed our first paying client. A modest deal, but it felt monumental. Months of work were finally paying off. I asked Eric to forward me the payment receipt so I could update our internal dashboard. He said, "Don't worry about it. I've got it covered." I blinked. "Covered how?" "We need to track it." He waved it off. "I'm handling the financials now. It's cleaner this way. Investors like centralized reporting." That didn't sit right with me, but I told myself to chill. Maybe he was just trying to be efficient. Maybe I was being paranoid, but it didn't stop there. Soon, Eric started locking me out of our shared documents, budget spreadsheets, CRM, updates, even our shared email account for investor communications. When I asked, he shrugged and said, "You're too busy with product anyway." I'm just trying to streamline that word again, streamline. Funny how betrayal always comes wrapped in corporate buzzwords. Meetings started happening without me. I'd check the calendar and see vague entries like investor sync or biz dev strategy. And when I asked about them, Eric would just say, "Oh, nothing big. I'll fill you in later." But he never did. Then one day, I got an email from a VC we'd pitched weeks earlier. He thanked me for the deck I'd made and said he was impressed, but he was confused. Why, Eric said, I was no longer part of the company. I stared at the screen, frozen. What the hell did that mean? I called Eric immediately. No answer. I texted him. "Hey, what's this about me not being part of the company?" He replied, 2 hours later, one sentence. "We need to talk." We met the next day at his favorite rooftop bar, the same place he always took investors when he wanted to impress them. I remember thinking, why here, why now? Something felt off. Eric showed up late, of course, sunglasses on like some kind of tech celebrity. He didn't even sit down before speaking. "Look, this is tough," he began. "But I've been thinking, and I don't think we're aligned anymore." My stomach dropped. "Aligned?" I asked. "What are you talking about? We built this thing together." He sighed like he was the victim. "You're great with code, man. Seriously. But this company's evolving. We're talking with big players now. We need a different kind of leadership." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was absurd. "So what, I'm just out?" He nodded, like he was offering me a severance package and not ripping my heart out. "I'll make sure you get something for your time," he said. "We'll call it a consultant role. You can move on to your next thing, my next thing." This was my thing. I stared at him, stunned. "You're kicking me out of something I helped create, something I bled for." He shrugged. "It's just business." That line, that soulless corporate line. I'd heard it in movies, read it in headlines, but never imagined it would be used against me. I walked out of that bar numb. I didn't eat for 2 days. I couldn't sleep. My apartment looked like a startup war zone. Whiteboards covered in wireframes, sticky notes of product ideas, mock-ups we'd brainstormed at 2 a.m. Everything reminded me of what we built. And now it was gone. But the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was the silence. Eric didn't reach out again. No follow-up. No explanation. Just erasure. A week later, I checked the company website. My name was gone. All the blog posts I'd written, deleted. The About Us page now said the company was founded by visionary entrepreneur Eric Stanton. Visionary. I wanted to scream. I wasn't some employee he could quietly let go. I was the co-founder. I built the damn product. I got us our first clients, but to him, I was just a stepping stone. And he'd stepped right over me. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at an old photo of us from college, arms around each other, grinning like idiots. I remembered the day we took it. We'd just pulled an all-nighter working on a class project. We said, one day, we'd build something real together. I guess we did. And then he stole it. But what Eric didn't know, what he hadn't even bothered to ask, was that I'd taken one important step before we ever launched publicly. Back when I was working those lonely 16-hour days, I filed something official, something that might just turn the tables. He thought he'd cut me out, but I wasn't done yet. Not even close. For weeks after Eric cut me out, I felt like I was living in a fog. Everything. I'd sacrificed my time, my energy, my sanity. It all felt meaningless. The startup that had been my entire life was now being paraded around on TechCrunch and LinkedIn as if I never existed. I'd lie awake at night, replaying every conversation we'd ever had, every moment I trusted him, every time I brushed off a red flag. I wasn't just grieving the loss of a company. I was grieving a friendship, a brotherhood. But grief eventually turns into something else, clarity. And clarity turns into fuel. One morning, about 3 weeks after our final meeting, I woke up to find a news article someone had sent me. Logicraft raises $4 million in seed funding. Logicraft, the company Eric and I built together. There he was, on the homepage, smiling in a tailored suit, standing beside investors and calling himself the sole founder. I didn't feel sad. This time I felt rage, cold, focused rage, because I knew something Eric didn't. I had legally filed a copyright for the core code of our platform. I hadn't done it to protect myself from him. I'd done it out of instinct, out of a belief that you protect what you build. And now, that little decision was going to save me. I dug through my old emails, found the registration confirmation, and contacted a lawyer. She was a calm, older woman named Denise, with a steel voice and eyes that didn't blink. After I explained everything, she leaned back in her chair and said, "You have a case, a strong one, but it wasn't going to be simple. Eric had money now, investors, a legal team. If I went after him, I'd be going to war, not just with him, but with everyone backing him." "You sure you want this?" Denise asked. I didn't hesitate. "I'm sure." We started documenting everything. My emails, Slack messages, old drafts of the product, Git commits with my name on them, video calls where I walked through the early prototype. I even had a recording of us discussing the idea on a late-night call months before launch. Piece by piece, we built a wall of proof. Meanwhile, Eric was everywhere. He started giving interviews, talking about his vision, about how he bootstrapped everything. From scratch, I watched one of them, half horrified, half fascinated. At one point, the interviewer asked, "So who helped you with the product?" In the early days, Eric smiled, that same practiced smile, and said, "Just me. I locked myself in a room and didn't come out until it was done. That was it." That was the moment something in me snapped. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was erasure. He wasn't just stealing what I built. He was trying to erase that I'd ever existed. The lawsuit was filed 2 weeks later. We hit him with copyright infringement, intellectual property theft, and misrepresentation. And because I'd never signed anything, relinquishing my rights, and because we'd never incorporated the business formally, my claim to the code and to the company's core product was rock solid. The response came fast. Eric's lawyers tried to paint me as a disgruntled former collaborator. They said I'd voluntarily walked away and had no meaningful contributions. But they underestimated two things: my paper trail, my memory. I remembered everything. The names of clients I brought in, the exact lines of code I'd written, the dates, the timelines. I wasn't some forgotten intern. He could sweep under the rug. Still, the legal battle wasn't quick. For months, we went back and forth. Discovery, depositions, court filings. I had to relive it all. Every injustice, every conversation, every knife he'd slipped between my ribs while smiling to my face. There were days I wanted to give up, days where I questioned whether it was worth it. I was exhausted, broke, and angry. But then I'd remember those nights, the sleepless ones, where I pushed through just to make our vision real. The demo calls I ran when Eric didn't even show up. This wasn't just business. This was personal. Then something unexpected happened. One of the investors, someone Eric had courted aggressively in the early days, reached out to my lawyer. She forwarded me the email. It said, "I didn't realize he'd cut you out like that. I remember meeting you during the first pitch. You were the only one who could answer my technical questions. That was all I needed to keep going. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't making it up." People remembered. Then came the deposition. I sat across the table from Eric for the first time in months. He looked different, not confident, not arrogant, just tired, maybe guilty, maybe not. He barely met my eyes. The lawyers went back and forth, asking questions, dates, development logs, timelines. At one point, Eric tried to claim the product had evolved so much that the original code was irrelevant. My lawyer pulled out a printout of the current platform's backend, almost line for line, identical to the code I'd submitted with my copyright. He went quiet. After that, things moved fast. His legal team started making offers, settlements, NDAs, payout proposals. But I didn't want money. I wanted acknowledgement. I wanted the truth out there, so I said no. I'd rather go to trial. They blinked first. A week before the court date, we reached a settlement, but on my terms. Eric issued a public statement acknowledging my role as co-creator and technical founder of the company. I was granted full legal ownership of the code base and received a controlling interest in the IP. He was forced to resign from his CEO position. The news hit fast. Startup scandal. Founder ousted. After co-creator wins legal battle. The internet exploded. Tech Twitter, Reddit. Even a segment on a startup podcast, people finally knew the truth. I remember reading the headline and feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Peace, not victory, not revenge, just peace. I didn't destroy. Eric, I didn't need to. He destroyed himself. All I did was tell the truth. And the truth was more powerful than anything he'd built on a lie. Winning the legal battle should have been the end of the story. But karma has a way of tying up loose ends in ways no court ever could. After Eric's public statement admitting to removing me from the company and stealing my work, the backlash came fast, and it didn't stop. Investors pulled out. Clients began terminating contracts, not wanting to be associated with a company built on fraud. Tech blogs that once praised Eric's vision now tore him apart. Startup fraud. The real founder speaks out. From CEO to canceled. The downfall of Eric Nguyen. And here's the twist. The seed investors who had put $2 more or million into Logicraft, they were furious. Not just because of the scandal, but because he had misrepresented the founding structure in his pitch decks legally that constituted investor fraud. They filed a separate civil suit against him for breach of contract and misrepresentation. In just a few weeks, the empire Eric had built on, lies began to crumble, but I didn't stop there. Now that I had regained control of the product IP, I had a choice. Let the company die or rebuild it from the ground up. With the truth. This time, I chose to rebuild. I changed the name, revamped the branding, and put together a small but dedicated team who believed in the vision. Not just the money. But before the relaunch, I decided to do something personal. I recorded a video. Just me, in a quiet studio, telling the whole story. No filters, no dramatic edits. Talked about how the startup was born, how Eric and I dreamed big, how I gave everything to make it real, and how betrayal taught me more than success ever could. It wasn't a revenge piece, it was a reckoning. At the end of the video, I looked directly into the camera and said, to anyone out there who's been cut out, overlooked, or stolen from, this isn't the end of your story. It's just the plot twist before the comeback. The video went viral. Within a week, it had over 2 million views. Tech leaders shared it. Startup founders sent messages. Strangers wrote emails telling me their own stories of betrayal. Suddenly, I wasn't just a victim. I was a symbol. And Eric, he went silent. No more interviews. No more podcasts. His LinkedIn profile quietly vanished. Last I heard, he was trying to get hired as a consultant, but no one in the industry wanted to touch him. The ultimate karma, the same industry he tried to impress, now treated him like a cautionary tale. Meanwhile, I poured my energy into the rebuild. The new platform, now called Corebase, launched 6 months later with cleaner UI, smarter automation, and most importantly, a story people believed in. We didn't just sell software, we sold integrity, and it worked. Old clients returned, new clients signed on. Investors, real ones. This time reached out, asking to back the new venture. I said yes to a few. But this time, I made sure every single contract protected the vision, the team, and the truth. I'd learned my lesson. Painfully, permanently. But here's what no one saw coming. A year after Corebase launched, I received a package. No name, no return address. Just a simple envelope with my name handwritten on the front. Inside was a letter from Eric. It wasn't long, just a few paragraphs. But in it, he said, "You were right. I was scared. I saw your brilliance, and I panicked that there'd be no place for me next to it, so I tried to erase it. I tried to erase you, and I lost everything. You didn't just build the product, you built the soul of it. I see that now. I'm sorry." No excuses, no begging for forgiveness, just regret. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and never responded. Because forgiveness isn't always about the other person. Sometimes it's about setting yourself free. Eric got what he deserved. Not because I destroyed him, but because he destroyed himself the moment he chose ego over partnership. lies over loyalty. That was karma, pure, undeniable, inescapable. It's funny how the worst thing that ever happened to me turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. Losing my company, my best friend, my sense of purpose, it nearly broke me. But sometimes rock bottom isn't the end. It's the foundation you need to rebuild stronger, smarter, and more awake than ever. Looking back now, I don't feel anger when I think of Eric. I feel clarity. He showed me exactly who he was, and in doing so, helped me discover exactly who I am. I used to think success was about building something big. Now, I know it's about building something honest. Today, Core Base is more than just a company. It's a second chance, a reminder that what's meant for you can never be stolen, only delayed. People often ask me what I'd do differently if I could go back. The truth, nothing, because every sleepless night, every betrayal, every painful step led me here. And here is a good place. So if you've ever been stabbed in the back by someone you trusted, if you've ever watched someone else take credit for your work, if you've ever been told you're not good enough, smart enough, or the right fit, let this be your sign. You're not done. You're not finished. You're just in the middle of your plot twist. Keep building, keep believing. And when the dust settles, let karma do what karma does best. Because in the end, the truth always wins.